Before we get into a general guide of how to play Stellaris No DlC, although this would be applicable to any DLC you're using, should you play Stellaris without any DLC? I think so. I was only planning to play like the first 20 minutes of Stellaris to get like the footage for this video, and I ended up playing for about an hour and a half. I got it invaded like fairly early on. I just want to fight it back, and it's just engrossing. It's fun. I think it's also better to learn like the base systems of the game without any DLC. Just to even see if you like the base system before you buy your old DLC. The game is also on sale right now. You can get it for I believe $12, and all the DLC I think for around 140, which is quite steep. But just try the base game out. $12, not that much right now, and yeah, I recommend it. Now, while we can use some of the pre-made empires, I think one of the funnest and the most engaging parts of Stellaris is making your own. When you focus on your empire creation, the first thing you're going to see are just going to be aesthetic stuff. Create screen is where you pick what your species is either good or bad at. You get 2 points to be given and 5 picks total. Blue ones are beneficial ones, which consume points. Red ones are negative ones, which give you points. I think the best things in Stellaris we should really focus on is research and population growth speed and like ally production, but there's really nothing we can do about it here in this screen. I think the best perk for that is intelligence. Gives you more research across the board. Natural engineers, it gives you more engineering research from jobs. I think engineering is the most consistent research tree and therefore the best. Rapid breeders gives you more population growth speed, just faster, more pops to work at jobs. Unruly is basically a free 2 points. It gives you more empire size from pops, and empire size, especially like this, it's very small. Even the downside of empire size is very much negligible as long as your system isn't like the most like unoptimized in existence. Even then, as long as you're doing things like somewhat decently, you'll be fine. Deviance gives you less governing ethics attraction, and the governing ethics attraction is really easy to control. This has basically no effect, and it's just 3 points. There are some alternatives you can use to the solitary. Pop-out users is rarely an issue until like maybe the late game. Most of the time you're going to have more buildings than people. Also sedentary, but that's more of a measurable setback, although it's minor. Ingenious gives you more energy from jobs. It's both what powers things and the currency in the game. It's a very flexible resource, which is great just to have a great stockpile and generation of. Industrious is the same, but for minerals, which is building stuff and housing. The more housing you get, actually, you get more private growth speed. So, pretty nice to have. But I think what's best is particularly just feeding your forge rolls when they get more advanced because they are quite hungry. There's also agrarian, but food is really an issue. I'm only really including this because, it's like part of like this kind of like trade group. It's only really something you should use as like a fringe setup, like, calic processing. And that's in Plantos, by the way. Adaptable gives 10% more habitability at the start. You prefer planets will be 80% more habitability. Anything under 100 will cost more pop upkeep, slower pop growth, and fewer resources. It helps with the more early game, although it's fairly easy to get more. It does take a little bit, so it's a pretty good perk to get. The extreme version is not with the 4 points. There are other things that you want to get with the trade points you have. The limited trade points you get. Strong is a decent perk. More armory damage, the more local pop output, food, energy, and minerals. Army is what you use to evade planets. Very strong is not worth it, and it also costs 3, even though strong costs 1 and only doubles it. It's kind of weird. Thrifty is a must for a trade focused empire, although I don't think you should really do a trade focused empire unless you're the Megacorp DLC, so you can actually do a proper trade focused empire. But as a mega corporation, you can still do if you want to, but it's there if you want. Here is the governing ethics screen, and this is what most of your theory crafting and just like experimentation is going to be, and I think is like the most enjoyable part of the game. It's just coming up with stuff and trying different things, and there's no really ethic or authority or civic, which is really bad. I'm not really sure what developers are trying to say, but Fanatic Xenophobe is by and far the best ethic. It gives you less salvage influence costs, which in the early game, that's the only really time influence is an issue, is expanding. So having this 4% less is amazing, and a population growth speed being 20% also great. You can't do diplomacy as well because you don't have as many envoys, and you have the decreased opinion of species. But even then, diplomacy is still doable. It's not going to be like everyone hates you immediately. You can still maintain good relations with your neighbors, so not that really a big deal. Overall, just an amazing ethic. Also gives you access to an edict, which gives you more monthly unity, 10% more. And edicts are temporary bonuses, which will cost unity or energy or a special resource. It's just the best ethic. Materialist is also, I think, what is one of the best ethics, and I think the base version might be a little better than the Fanatic version, just because for the actual point you're not getting that much more. Both give you access to academic privilege living standard, which for like a little more upkeep on your pops, you're going to be getting 10% more research from them, which is quite nice. Also the robot upkeep, which is it's there, it's fine, whatever. It's also other civics you get, which give you more technology, more research. So research good, materialist good. Egalitarian gives you more faction unity gain, which is quite nice since your factions do generate a pretty sizable amount of unity, so getting more from them is nice. But what particularly is the best thing about egalitarian is the lesser pop resource output. This means more alloys from mail arrowers, more consumed goods from artisans, and more research from your researchers. A pretty good ethic. I think one of my favorites. And if I'm not gonna go for xenophobe, I really want to rush research. I will go egalitarian for this. You also get access to utopian living standards, which if only you get like a really big like surplus of consumer good generation, then you can use this, and it makes your pops really happy, which in turn makes your stability higher. Pacifists, all depending on how you play pacifists, you could be surprised you acquire yourself one. Let's emphasize on pops isn't anything really special, but the stability is quite nice to have stability, especially an indication of how well your planet is running, how well your economy is going, and the more it is above 50, the more resources you get. So pretty nice to have. Also gives you access to your edict, which for not much increases your happiness of your pops by 10%, which also contributes to stability. Furries, I mean xenophile, is I think an alright ethic if you want to do more trade focused diplomacy like empire, which they kind of go hand in hand. Xenophile is a play. I just don't think it's as strong as compared to others, but then again, diplomacy is a pretty nice thing to convince your neighbors not to kill you or to help kill someone else. So it's pretty good to run too, although I think there are better ethics you can choose, but if you want to run this, you can. Authoritarian, you get more monthly influence gain, which is quite nice for the early game, so expanding, since that's where you're going to be spending your influence the most. And that's not as useful as the game goes on, but if you have some DLCs, depending on like what you have, some things cost influence to build, so it's nice for that. You get more local pop resource output, which is also quite nice to have. More food, mineral, energy, it's nice. But what I think is particularly useful is the stratified economy living standards. Let's just say I don't know, hypothetically, that the workers didn't get much of a say, a ton of political power. Maybe you don't have to treat them that well, but what are they gonna do? They can't vote. Who cares what they say? So it's you don't gotta spend as much on their living standards. Also slavery, but you wouldn't do that, right? Spiritualists. Faith. More monthly unity is quite nice with the 10%. I think fanatic is actually probably better than the base one, just because getting 20% unity is quite nice to have. Also, the faction you're gonna be getting from this likes to be like having the majority of the population being spiritualists. So with being fanatic, they're also going to be getting more people who have that ethic, which is it's good, more unity. You're going to get less edict upkeep, which is quite nice. Like edict cost, also just all around good. You also get access to a edict, which increases your priest output, and you also get access to a temple buildings, which I believe are a little bit better than the normal unity buildings you get. So overall, just more unity and all that's pretty nice. I do think materialist is a little bit better. You can't be an opposing ethic, by the way, which you might already guess, but I think materialist overall the whole game would be more useful, but spiritualist in the early game, because getting your first 2 tradition trees fairly quickly is quite important. There's a lot of things which are going to be really helpful, but it kind of gets less and less useful as the game goes on, because just traditions get exponentially like more and more expensive as the more and more you get. So you're gonna have to invest a lot more to get them, and also in order to get the better unity buildings, you're gonna have the better research. So it's usually just better just to go for more research and more unity, and even then it's not gonna help you like get them too much faster if you like going spiritualist and going on unity rush. I mean, unless you're going specifically unity rush, then we'll go faster, but I still think materialist is better. And no matter what you're doing, I recommend you either be a spiritualist or materialist, just so you can lock things a little bit faster. Militarist. Less claim influence cost, which is nothing really too spectacular. Claiming is just going to declare of a person's system as your own, just gives you reason to declare one of them. It's not too spectacular of above. Ship fire rate is quite nice to have. If you're a militarist, you're probably going to be in war market and stuff, so having stronger ships is good. The No Tree War Doctrine, when you complete one of the tradition trees in the game, the Supremacy one, you get access to War Doctrine. No Tree gives you 33% more fire rate, which is quite nice, but your ships, won't really retreat, which, but if you already have some pretty strong ships, especially at the more long range, you have your carriers, they're a bit more tricked out. It's quite nice to have, so it's there. And I feel like militarist isn't that strong by itself, but you get some civics which are particularly nasty. Distinguished admiralty in general, distinguished admiralty is probably one of my favorite civics. It makes your admirals in general start at level 3. You also make your rule of that, so that's pretty nice to do. As you get 20 more fleet command limit just right off the bat, which is great to have. More armor experience gain, just overall really good civics. Also citizen service, which is quite nice as well. So it's a bit of a weird one, but if you want to do more warmongering stuff, it's definitely there. Now, I'm not going to go through all civics because we're going to be here for a while if that was the case. The 2 that I like to run with is this specific setup, which I think, is a good one to start off with. Meritocracy gives you more specialist pop resource output, more consumer goods, more alloys, more research, very good to have. Technocracy, there's a few different things. It's going to replace one of your politician jobs with a science director. It's going to give you a little bit less unity, but more research, which I think is better. Your scientists also start with a random... Your scientists also start off a random expertise trait, which is going to be like them having a specific, expertise in a certain category. They're going to discover that thing, more often and have better research for that specific thing. It only applies to the council, and also more research around it, which At first, when I was playing the game, I didn't really value, but it's particularly useful because sometimes Stellaris just doesn't really give you the text that you kind of need. So having more options when you pull refreshes is always great, especially to start off with. It's nice. For ruler traits, pretty much all of them are going to be pretty good. I just prefer to have your ruler be a scientist because then you get access to Spark of Genius, which is going to give you more research speed. You also get level up for level 2, which is going to give you 6. And you can also go for Eye of Talent, which is going to give you more leader experience gain. And it's, just nice to have that off the bat. You can really go with anything you want, but I think these typically two are the best. Don't pause, there's a few things you're going to want to do before you do so. Go to the market, sell 100 food and buy 100 minerals. Select your construction ship and build mining stations in your home system. This usually costs 200, but sometimes it's less, rarely more. 2 random planets should spawn near you. Assume you do not mess with any settings in your pregame. Set your text. I look for these texts. If all are visible, look to see which one has a bigger planet size. This means how much you can build on that one, so go to that one first. If there is only one visible, just go to that one. If neither are, then explore. This could be done automatically on a science ship, but I think it's better just to plan a course. Shift click with Q select and explore, as you won't need to go too far usually. Sometimes Stellaris is funny and lets you put your planets further 2 jumps away. This is rare though. Your military ships can also explore for animal you want to start with. When you're serving a system with a planet, make sure before you tell to do anything else that the planet does have an anomaly, because otherwise you can't settle on it. Also, shift click your construction ship to go to the system being surveyed. If those planets were next to you, you still want to build star bases adjacent to each other because the influence cost will be the same. Go to your policy and set your economic policy to militarize. It gives you 25% more allies and 25% less consumer goods. It might be on by default if you're a militarist. You can change it every 10 years. If you chose materialist, you also want to go to species right and set the academic privilege. This gives you 10% more research, although you probably want to build a civilian industries to help you with upkeep in the early game if you want the militarized economy. If you chose spiritualist, authoritarian, or pacifist, turn on your ethics edict. Xenophobes, you need to get planetary unification for it to appear. You can unpause now, but you still want to listen to the rest of the video. You also don't need to build an outpost in every system. It doesn't have great resources linked to other system, or choke point deny something, you don't need to claim it. Also, when exploring it, do like a circle to find these choke points. Is it easier to defend, or use it as a staging area for attack? Anomalies will pop up as you explore, and tell your science ships to explore the easier ones. The harder ones take a hot minute, and most of the time you get various buffs or resources from completing them, so it's just better to do the easy ones to get those ones faster, and also have your scientists level up a little bit faster too. Those also these name areas on the map, which are nebulas. With a tech you get fairly early on, you can build nebula refineries in star bases, which give minerals and later exotic gases. Make your way over there if you can, like if they're close enough. After you get your first 2 colony ships made, make science ships. You could just do 1, but for fast exploring, I recommend 2. Assign 1 of them to assist research your capital, since it gives 10% more research to that planet and increases both level. We'll talk more about leaders when we get there, but I will look for scientists with faster surveying, although anything really will be fine. Research Unity are considered resources, something the game doesn't really tell you, but benefits from anything that increases resources. Research will always be better than Unity because Unity costs for traditions get progressively higher, so the amount of more Unity you need to unlock more stuff is just going to be a lot, and it sort of caps out what it can give you, since there's some tech things you need to unlock to make more use of Unity, including like ascension perks. Research is what's going to give you your, well, better everything, including more Unity making stuff. Also, I'm not sure what the others in with the rest of the video, but Empire has increased with the amount of pops, colonies, and systems you have. It increases your tech, traditions, and edict costs. I would, if you want to rush tech as fast as possible, then you want to play more tall than wide, although it's not that much of a downside. While doing your surveying, you should build 3 to 4 generate districts on your capital. I'll typically build 1 first on the autocrat movement. This gives you 5% more Unity from jobs and provides jobs with Unity and bonuses depending on your ethics. This helps you get your first 2 tradition trees at a good pace. Afterwards, build research labs. You want to get your research as high as possible. See, districts give you more building slots, and you also want to make an energy grid once you unlock it. Also, keep building mining stations, and when you aren't building anything on your planets, clear blockers. For the other 2 worlds, make them an industrial and mining world with an agri district or 2, which you might not even need, since if you build hydroponic base on star bases, it can take a large part, possibly all of it, to like the mid game. All your planets as nations are good for what they do. Besides tech worlds, it only provides less upkeep, which don't do much for you. You just want to have it on your capital anyway. Your base capital destination gives you 10% more research from all jobs. I wouldn't change this. Your forge factory worlds make all your industrial districts alloy or consumer goods only. It's more efficient since it's a 20% less upkeep reduction, instead of a 10% split between them both. You should probably keep it industrial for the first world, although you can switch it on the fly. Stability is primarily tied to your citizen happiness. Obviously, if there's any housing or rapid unemployment, there's probably going to be some issues. Otherwise, amenities try to keep your stability at least above 50 and prioritize your more developed worlds. There are some jobs that directly add to stability, like enforcers, which also reduce crime. Your citizens have an ethic once your faction is formed based off your ethics and actions as well, or whatever usual minor deviations happen. Bleaching your parties will also make your citizens happy. It also makes the party generate more unity. What a party wants will vary, either conquest, something between being like outlawed or making you more technology advanced over empires. It's typically going to align with whatever ethics / whatever you want to do. Also, when your factions do form, you can just promote and suppress the factions just by clicking on it for free and change it whenever. This also was where the political power from the living standards also come in, and why things like stratified economy is really good. Overall, I would prioritize having the strongest possible research and ally generation. Energy is what I like to have to be a driving force in the early to mid game, with a later focus on minerals to feed your factory worlds and forges, as well as refineries. Food just meet demand, the same with consumer goods. If you do have a consumer goods surplus generation, most of the time you'll probably in decent conditions to the living standard. Just bump up the social welfare, or if you do have utopian abundance, which I mean, if you do have that strong of a consumer good, just to make them happier, which will increase his ability. One last thing, click jobs are bad. Do prioritize them if there are jobs that can be worked. Also, you just want to place the commercial zones if you got that one to begin with. They are extremely inefficient with having the whole setup. For your for tradition Star of Discovery, on adoption gives you Edict Map of Stars, give you more survey speed and increase anomaly discovery chance. Also, if you go over your Edict Fund, prioritize Map of Stars until you get your 2 habitable planet survey. When you go over your Edict Fund, it will eat into monthly Unity. If you're soon to be colonizing, get colonized further into a new life. This will give you an extra pop on colony creation. This will also work if the colony is already developing, then you get to boldly go, more survey speed and less of a chance for your signership getting clapped, and reaching for the stars, less influence costs on outpost build. You get them in either order. If the planets were a little further, just reverse the order you got your traditions. Also, if you are a fanatic xenophobe, you don't really need reach for the stars. After finishing traditions, complete discovery, which will give you a 10% research bonus. The rest of expansion traditions aren't very good, and the completion effect isn't really either. Instead of fishing expansion, go for supremacy, gives more armor damage and no capacity on adoption. Going for master ship rights give you less build cost and faster build speed. After finishing supremacy, you get access to world doctrines in your policy tab. I like kind of run, but you can go for what you want. Fill your fleets, not just to have them there for defense, clearing systems of hostiles, or glorious conquest, but for power projection. This is based off your fleet's price to your emperor size. This gives you more influence. You can finish expansion 2 after supremacy. You can get really any tradition you want afterwards. I think prosperity is good just because it gets more resources and less upkeep. Domination is also good too. After finishing trees, you can get ascension perks. There are 3, maybe 4 I recommend getting. Transcendent learning, more experience gain capacity and pool size. Interstellar dominion, less influence cost on outpost build and less claim cost, but that's whatever. You don't really need to get this if you're not xenophobe. You can get either first, technological ascendancy, get 10% more research and slightly higher chance for attacks. You can get this first if you really want to push research and maybe play more 12 than wide. One vision, if you do more of a Unity focus build, 10% more monthly Unity, less pop amenity usage, which in turn make your pops more happier, and also increase governing ethics attraction. For leaders, you'll start with one of each type besides a general. Let's start with scientists. You're probably only recruiting 1 or 2 more than you already have. Really, any perk is good. I'll go for a survey perk. Anything else is good too, but I prioritize this. For animals, anything is good as well. I prefer trickers for a better chance to escape. Aggressiveness would be my second, anything else is fine. Recruit them as needed, but I typically have like 3 or 4 in my games. For governor, over traits are good for what they do, but keep an eye out for intellectual. This gives you 10% more research from jobs. You probably want to have one in your league for the start, so check it. You can also see when it's going to refresh. There's also fertility preacher, more food and population growth speed, shipwright, and a entire fleet officer. I will go for shipwright for less cost, but if you already have the ally ship protection pretty strong, then go for fleet officers. And those 3, which you need to be on council for, will have these little 3 lines going through them in their traits. That means it's a counter trait. All counter traits are good, it just depends on what you need. I would try to get one with logical understanding, particularly when you have a lot of ships. They do eat a lot of energy and a decent amount of alloys to upkeep. Generals, you only need 1 really, unless you're like attacking on multiple fronts. I would go for butcher or anything else to increase your army damage, but then again, all the traits are pretty much good as well. The only thing I would really go for is army upkeep one, because it's just armies don't really cost much upkeep. That's pretty much it, just a few tips. If your trade rates get messed up because maybe some system was taken for you, or maybe you should take capital, click here to reroute them to the capital if you can. If you have your buildings outside your sector, go here to make a new one. It's like the pseudo capital of that sector, so you need to put a governor there so you have a sectoral governor. It's not a bad idea if you have a league pass with your spirit to have one of your planets level them up before you move there, or you know at some point you're going to have a new sector. It's it's a good idea in general. Upgrade all your star bases in your systems with your planets so they can collect the trade value of the planets. Trade collection means that the star base will collect trade value 1 jump away. Each level of that star base will give an extra trade collection, and trade helps will also give you more. But yeah, bye. Hope that helped.